The train's whistle cut through the evening air like a wounded animal's cry. Smoke billowed, curling into the reddened sky, leaving behind the scent of iron and coal. On the lonely station platform, Clara Dawson stood very still, a small trunk at her feet, her white veil shivering in the prairie wind. The lace on her gown looked out of place here, too delicate for the dust, too hopeful for this moment. She waited, though there was no one left to wait for. Her fiancé was gone. He had stepped off with another woman on his arm, laughter trailing behind like a whip crack. The townsfolk had seen it all. Now they lingered in the distance, whispering into gloved hands, eyes darting like crows. Clara could feel their judgment settle over her shoulders heavier than any shawl. The shame was bitter, metallic, and it burned as deeply as the dry wind cutting her lips. She did not cry. Not then. Instead, her hands trembled at her sides, curling into fists until her nails dug into her palms. She thought of the long miles she had traveled, the promises she had pinned her whole life upon. A woman's rejection, she thought, was not only the absence of love, it was a lantern snuffed out before nightfall, leaving her stumbling blind. It was then she noticed him. Jameson Cole, the rancher, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a face worn by sun and storm. His clothes were plain, dust-stained, his hat brim shadowing eyes that looked like weathered stone. But it was not him that startled her most. It was the two small children clinging to his sides. A boy and a girl, twins by the look of them, their hair wind-tangled, their eyes full of restless wonder. Jameson paused when he saw her. He did not look at her as the others did. Not with pity, not with contempt, but with a kind of recognition, a man who knew what it was to be emptied, to be left with silence where love should be. The children's gazes lingered on Clara, unashamed, as though they saw through lace and dust to the raw truth beneath. Slowly, as if each step cost him, Jameson crossed the platform. He stopped a pace away, removed his hat, and bent down. Not to bow, not in courtship, but in an act of humility that seemed foreign on a man so proud a posture. His voice, when it came, was low and gravel-thick. "Be my wife," he said. The words sounded like they had been dragged out of him, each syllable heavy. "My twins need a mother like you." Clara's lips parted, breath sharp. She almost laughed from the absurdity of it, an offer laid at her feet when she still stood in the ruins of another. "You don't know me," she whispered. Jameson's eyes flicked toward the children, then back to her. "I know enough," he said simply. But she shook her head, throat tight. "No, I can't." Her voice cracked, a bird wing snapping midair. "I've been made a fool once today. I won't trade one cage for another." His jaw worked, but he did not argue. He only replaced his hat and rose, silent again. The twins tugged at his coat, eyes wide with questions they did not ask. When he turned to leave, they looked back at her, their stares clinging like anchors cast into her chest. She swallowed hard, unable to move until they were gone, swallowed by dust and distance. That night, Clara found her way to the small inn run by Martha Weaver. Martha was a woman with kind eyes and hair gone white, her hands steady as she lit lamps against the creeping dark. She asked no questions, only offered food and a bed. But as Clara sat with broth cooling before her, Martha finally spoke. "Out here, storms don't waste themselves," the older woman murmured, her voice soft as wool. "They carve the strongest trees. Maybe that's what's happening to you, child." Clara bent her head, tears spilling into her lap, hands hiding her face. All the careful hope she had carried across miles now seemed foolish weight. Yet in the silence of that room, another image pressed itself upon her mind, not her runaway groom, not the gossiping townsfolk, but the way Jameson's children had looked at her, as though they knew her heart better than she did herself, as though they saw not a rejected bride, but something else entirely. Sleep was a fragile thing that night. She woke before dawn, restless. The air outside was pale with first light when she stepped onto the inn's porch. Across the street, Jameson was loading supplies into a wagon, his frame outlined by the rising sun. The twins scampered at his feet, chasing each other through dust, laughter ringing soft and sharp. Then Grace, the little girl, noticed her. She stopped, waved, and called out, "Miss Clara." Her voice was small but piercing in the quiet morning. Eli joined, echoing his sister, their cries reaching across the road. Clara froze, her hand tightening on the porch rail. She could not look away. Jameson turned then, his eyes finding hers. He didn't move, didn't speak. He only watched her with that same steady silence, his hat low against the glare. Between them stretched the road, empty but charged, and in it hovered a question heavier than words. "Will you?" Clara stood caught in the light, torn between the ruin she carried and the fragile, trembling possibility before her. The world seemed to still, waiting for her answer. Clara's breath was shallow, the dawn air sharp in her chest. For a long while she only stood there, the children's voices echoing across the dust. Then, with steps that felt heavier than her small trunk had ever been, she crossed the road. Jameson paused in his work, the reins dangling in his hands. The twins went still, expectant. "I don't know if I could be a wife," Clara said softly, her voice breaking under the weight of all she feared. "But I can try. I can try to be kind to your children." Jameson gave no speech, no polished reply. He only tipped his head once, slow, as though the gesture cost him, and helped her into the wagon. The twins, wide-eyed, grinned as if the world had righted itself. Clara sat stiffly beside him, the horizon unfolding like an uncharted map, and for the first time since the train station, she felt the faintest glimmer of forward motion. The days at the ranch were measured not by clocks, but by labor. Morning sun poured gold across the fields as Jameson mended fences, his body bent to work. Clara, still shy in the new rhythm of this life, found herself teaching Grace to thread and needle, her small fingers clumsy and eager. Eli brought her books, dog-eared and dust-stained, and she read aloud at dusk while the children leaned against her skirts. From the porch Jameson sometimes watched, silent. The weight of his gaze felt more than seen. Their exchanges were sparse, her placing bread quietly at his seat, him draping his coat over her shoulders when the chill cut too deep. Words were rare, but gestures filled the gaps. Like water dripping onto stone, they carved something subtle, something steady. Yet the town did not let her forget. Whispers followed Clara each time she rode in for supplies. Women with parasols tilted their heads, their voices sharpened with scorn. "Left at the station, and now she latches onto coal," they murmured. The words stung sharper than thorns. Clara bore them in silence, though her hands trembled as she tucked flour and beans into her basket. One afternoon she lingered at the market too long, the sting of those voices pressing hard. When she turned, Jameson was there, his shadow falling across her. He said nothing. He rarely did, but the steadiness of his presence pushed back against the whispering circle. It silenced tongues, though it could not silence the doubt in Clara's own chest. Was she truly wanted or merely needed? The answer came in fire. It was night when the storm rolled in, black clouds bruising the horizon. Lightning speared the sky, and moments later a crack split the air as the barn erupted in flame. Clara woke to the children's cries, the orange glow painting their faces with terror. Without thought, she ran into the blaze, skirts dragging through mud, smoke clawing at her lungs. Inside, the children's small pony shrieked in panic, its rope tangled. Clara's fingers bled as she fumbled at knots, heat blistering her skin. Then strong arms seized her, dragging her out into the night. Jameson's voice thundered over the crackle. "Don't you dare leave them too." His face, fierce and broken, bent close as he held her against his chest. For a breathless moment she felt it all. The raw fear, the desperate care he had buried deep, the truth that she had already become more than a stranger on his land. By dawn, the barn was a black skeleton against the sky. The children clung to Clara's skirts, soot streaking her cheeks, hair singed but eyes steady. When the townsfolk arrived, drawn by smoke and rumor, they expected to find ruin. Instead, they found Clara standing firm, Jameson beside her, their hands not touching, but their silence joined. Whispers rose, then faltered. No one could sneer at the woman who had run through fire, who had stood in ashes without flinching. Clara Dawson was no longer the bride left at the station. She was something more, something forged by flame, claimed not by vow, but by courage. Jameson lifted his hat, his eyes meeting hers in the morning light. No proposal was spoken this time. None was needed. And here, dear listener, let me lay the final words gently in your hands. Sometimes life places a stone of shame heavy upon our chest. We think it will break us. But if we carry it with quiet grace, if we dare to love where we were once unloved, the stone changes. It becomes a foundation strong enough to build a life upon. Out here in the wide West, promises may shatter like glass, but hearts can be rebuilt from fire and ash, if only we have the courage to stay.